Welcome back to Quiet Maghreb Crimes. Today, we are opening 4 dark true crime cases from Morocco, stories of human cruelty, deception, and greed that expose the worst in people. Every single one of these chilling, real-life mysteries happened 100% here in Morocco. Sit back as we walk through these cases step by step. On a hot summer evening in August 2011, around 7 o'clock, Farida Elmanesh was standing on the 5th floor balcony of her apartment building on Shakib Arslan Street in Meknes. Suddenly, chaotic screams echoed from the building directly across the street. She turned to look and froze in terror. A young woman, completely stripped of her clothing, burst onto a 4th floor balcony and threw herself into the open air. Just behind her, Farida caught a brief glimpse of several young men standing in the dark shadows of the balcony. Seconds later, the woman's body struck the pavement below. Farida rushed down the stairs and crossed the street. But by the time she reached the sidewalk, the young woman had already passed away. Police Chief Al Sadiq arrived shortly after with a forensic team to secure the scene. Officers checked the victim's body, confirmed her death, and handed the homicide investigation over to the Regional Police Division. Detectives immediately headed up to the 4th floor apartment. They knocked repeatedly and rang the bell, but no one answered. The building manager revealed that the unit belonged to a man named Rida, currently working at a Moroccan consulate in France, but his father-in-law, Qasim El Mabshour, managed the property. Police contacted Qasim, who arrived quickly to unlock the apartment. Inside, the rooms were in total disarray. The bedroom mattress was pulled off its frame, and used paper towels and torn women's clothing were scattered across the floor. Searching underneath the bed, officers recovered a leather handbag. Inside was a national identity card belonging to a young woman named Fadwa Mohadi, born in April 1994 in Meknes. The bag also contained an active mobile phone and a personal notebook. In another room, officers found a second mobile phone plugged into a charger. Detective Omar Sousidi seized both phones, sealed the apartment with red wax, and sent Qasim to headquarters while he headed to the municipal morgue. The medical examiner's initial report was horrific. The autopsy revealed Fadwa had been sexually assaulted by multiple perpetrators just hours before her death. Deep scratch marks covered her body, indicating she had fought back fiercely before jumping to her death to escape her attackers. Back at the station, Qasim insisted he was the only person with a key to his son-in-law's apartment, keeping it locked in his wardrobe. However, when police accompanied him home to check, the key was missing. Qasim admitted his 20-year-old son, Hamid, who had dropped out of high school, had a history of taking things from the room. But Hamid was nowhere to be found. The next morning, digital forensics unlocked the seized mobile phone. What they found on the device was terrifying. Video recordings documented the entire assault. 4 young men had attacked Fadwa, while a 5th filmed the horrific scene on his phone. Police traced the phone's owner to Nasser Ben Massi. When confronted with the video evidence, Nasser broke down and confessed. He named the 4 attackers Jalil Bouadi, Salim El Zouak, Nizar Boomer, and Hamid El Mabshour. Nasser explained that Salim had been pursuing Fadwa, but when she rejected his advances, the group planned to drug her, assault her, and film the act to blackmail her into silence. Nasser claimed he only held the camera, and that Fadwa threw herself from the balcony when it came to his turn. Within days, police tracked down and arrested all 4 primary attackers, including Hamid, whose father finally brought him in. Laboratory analysis confirmed DNA matches for all 4 suspects. Facing undeniable video evidence, the entire group was formally handed over to the Prosecutor General. In Rabat, reliable intelligence reached local law enforcement regarding a Spanish national named Marcel Morin, who had rented a house in the historic Casbah of the Udayas. Morin paid a full year's rent in cash, without negotiating the price, claiming he was fulfilling a lifelong dream. However, the quiet atmosphere of the historic neighborhood, long favored by artists and writers, was quickly disrupted as the residence turned into a hub for late-night gatherings. Because Morin worked as a journalist for an international media outlet, investigators proceeded carefully. They obtained judicial authorization to monitor his communications, intercepting a phone call mentioning that a requested delivery would arrive on September 3rd via a special courier in exchange for 3 million units of currency, believing the cargo involved weapons or narcotics coming from the north. Surveillance teams took positions around the entrance of the Casbah. At 5 o'clock on September 3rd, a vehicle registered in Nader parked near a local school, and a man around 30 years old stepped out, carrying a briefcase toward the Casbah. An undercover officer trailed him into the long, straight main street. Sensing he was being followed in the quiet neighborhood, the courier suddenly ducked down a side alley and vanished. Despite an exhaustive search of the area, including the minaret room of the local mosque, the courier could not be located. To maintain continuous surveillance without raising suspicion, police arranged for an undercover female officer, Hanay Il Balul, to take over a local soup vendor's stall right at the Casbah's single entrance. For 3 days, the parked car remained under watch, registered to a man named Hamid Ben Mosa from Nador, who had a criminal record for narcotics trafficking. The situation escalated on September 4th, when the severed torso of a man washed up near the Rabat coastline close to the Casbah. 3 days later, officers discovered the remaining limbs near a local cemetery. Fingerprint analysis confirmed the remains belonged to Hamid Ben Mosa. Investigators realized the murder had taken place inside the Casbah and reviewed every detail recorded by Officer Hanay at the entrance. Her reports highlighted a recurring pattern. A worker from the local bakery frequently pushed a handcart out of the Casbah, ostensibly carrying wood ash or fetching firewood. His trips coincided directly with the discovery of the body parts. On the morning of September 12th, police staged a minor traffic collision involving an undercover officer's car and the baker's handcart. The maneuver allowed officers to verify his identity as Al-Hussein Elt Shaker. A background check revealed Elt Shaker was a convicted murderer who had previously served 21 years of a life sentence before being released and finding work at the Casbah bakery, where he eventually took on the role of the mosque's muezzin. Investigators kept El Shaker under surveillance until September 15th, when wiretaps recorded him using the bakery's landline to schedule a drop-off with Moran for 6 o'clock that morning. Before dawn, officers positioned themselves around the main square. El Shaker arrived pushing his handcart, cleared away bags of wood ash, and retrieved a briefcase just as Moran pulled up in an SUV. Moran opened his trunk, accepted the briefcase, and handed El Shaker a heavy package of cash. Police immediately swarmed the vehicle, arresting both men on the spot. Under interrogation, Moran confessed that his media credentials were merely a front. He was using the rented home to traffic hashish to Europe and acquire cocaine, arriving through regional trade routes. Shaker initially claimed he was just a paid courier, but a search of his quarters uncovered Hamid Ben Mossa's identity documents, clothing, and bloodstains. Faced with the evidence, Shaker confessed to the murder. He explained that Ben Mossa had sought refuge in his home while running from the police. When Ben Mossa revealed the contents of his briefcase, Shaker decided to kill him in his sleep, steal his money and phone, and dismember his body to dispose of the evidence. Ahead of the Eid al-Adha holiday season in 1998, rumors spread across local markets that livestock supplies might not meet demand. Expecting prices to surge, livestock trader Haj Abdulhadi El-Hayar brought a flock of 1,000 Sardi sheep from Bujad to a major market outside Casablanca. To manage operations, Abdulhadi rented a barn on the city outskirts, hired 3 assistants from his hometown, and employed a truck driver named Reda Mansour. Abdulhadi carried all his cash earnings in a traditional leather pouch strapped around his waist. His driver, Reda, repeatedly urged him to deposit the money into a nearby bank account for safety, but Abdulhadi ignored the advice. Every night, he slept in a room attached to the barn, using the cash pouch as a pillow. As expected, market demand soared in the final days before the holiday. 2 days before Eid, Abdulhadi had sold all but 300 sheep, accumulating over 540,000 dirhams. On the night of the 7th of Dhu al-Hijjah, as Abdulhadi slept, he awoke to the feeling of a cold blade against his neck. A masked intruder, holding a large knife, motioned for him to remain silent, snatched the leather pouch, and struck Abdulhadi over the head with a heavy wooden club before fleeing into the night. Abdulhadi shouted for help, bringing his driver and assistants running, but the thief had vanished into the darkness. Reda drove his injured employer to the hospital, while police chief Mohamed El Boudari arrived to process the crime scene. Detectives interviewed all 4 employees, who claimed they were asleep until they heard Abdulhadi's cries for help. When Chief El Boudari ran background checks on the group, he discovered that while the 3 assistants had clean records, the driver, Reda El Mansour, had previously served 5 years in prison for violent robbery. Noticing how persistently Reda had tried to convince his boss to move the money to a bank, a detail that could have been staged to eliminate suspicion, Chief El Boudari placed Reda under close surveillance. After driving Abdulhadi back to Bujad, Reda returned to Casablanca late that night by bus. An undercover detective followed him as he met an associate in a private car and entered a house on the city outskirts. An hour later, Reda emerged holding a plastic bag and boarded a grand taxi. At 4 o'clock in the morning, police intercepted Reda. Inside his bag, officers discovered 250,000 dirhams in cash. Cornered, Reda confessed that he had planned the robbery, recruiting a contact he had met in prison to execute the break-in and assault. On Eid morning, police raided the accomplice's home, recovering the remaining 280,000 dirhams hidden underneath a bed. Both men were formally charged with violent robbery and conspiracy, while Abdulhadi was summoned to recover his stolen funds. On March 15, 1970, twin brothers Hassan and Houssine Shams il-Din were born in Oujda. The twins were so identical that even their mother could only tell them apart by a small birthmark on Houssine's back. After their family relocated to Taza, both brothers attended high school together. While Hassan was a disciplined student who earned high marks, Houssine was intelligent, but reckless. Hassan passed his baccalaureate exam with honors in 1987, while Houssine barely passed. Both enrolled in the law faculty in Fez, where Houssine frequently tricked Hassan into taking oral exams in his place until professors caught on. Hassan eventually earned his law degree, completed a 2-year apprenticeship, and opened a successful private law practice in Fez. Houssine, having dropped out, was hired by Hassan to manage office administration. For years, the brothers worked closely together. However, Houssine's extravagant lifestyle and romantic entanglements led him to skim money from the practice. Hassan began noticing the financial discrepancies and grew frustrated by Houssine's reckless behavior, which often damaged Hassan's professional reputation due to their identical appearance. The final break came when Hassan fell in love and decided to get married. Realizing his fiancée could not tell him apart from his twin brother, Hassan feared future complications and decided to sever his professional ties with Houssine. On Friday, April 18, 1997, the brothers met at an inherited rural property near Mosul to settle their business separation and divide their estate. An intense argument broke out over Houssine's behavior. Enraged, Houssine went inside the house, retrieved a hunting rifle, and began threatening his brother. During the heated altercation, the firearm discharged, striking Hassan in the head and killing him instantly. Panic-stricken as night fell, Houssine realized the estate workers would arrive at dawn. He grabbed a shovel, dug a deep pit beside the house, dropped Hassan's body inside along with the rifle and unused cartridges, and buried the remains. He spent the weekend reflecting, ultimately deciding to steal his brother's identity. On Monday, April 21, 1997, Houssine walked into the local police station, posing as Hassan, and reported his brother Houssine missing. For 10 years, Houssine successfully assumed Hassan's life, running the law practice without raising suspicion among clients or colleagues. To protect his cover, he immediately broke off contact with Hassan's fiancée, who quietly withdrew from his life. In 2009, local authorities issued an eminent domain order to acquire the Mosul property for a public infrastructure project. Desperate to prevent excavation near the house, Houssine filed administrative lawsuits to delay the project. By 2011, all legal appeals were exhausted, and heavy construction equipment moved in to demolish the old house. Days into the demolition, workers uncovered human remains buried alongside a hunting rifle and ammunition. Forensic examiners determined the victim died from a close-range gunshot to the head. Investigators summoned the property owner, attorney Hassan Shams Din, for questioning. When Houssine refused to appear, the investigating magistrate ordered him brought in by force. During questioning, Houssine denied knowing about the remains, claiming his missing brother Houssine used to host late-night parties at the property before vanishing. The magistrate ordered him held in pre-trial detention while forensic teams analyzed the remains. As part of standard booking procedures at the detention facility, officers took his fingerprints and sent them to national database records. The results stunned investigators. The prints belonging to the man in custody as attorney Hassan Shams Din actually matched the missing person file for Houssine Shams Din. Confronted with the fingerprint evidence and skull measurements confirming the buried remains were Hassan, Houssine finally broke down. He confessed to burying his brother and assuming his identity for over a decade, though he claimed the gun fired accidentally during their fight. Houssine was formally indicted for premeditated murder identity theft, and practicing law without qualifications, bringing a definitive end to a decade-long deception. In January 2000, Senior Captain Ibrahim El Hamdi was preparing for retirement after decades of service in Saleh. On Monday morning, January 15th, a call came in reporting that an elderly woman had been found unconscious near Building 20 on El Malki Street. El Hamdi went to the scene himself and found neighbors gathered around a fragile woman lying on the ground. She was breathing, so he called an ambulance to take her to the hospital. Neighbors knew her only as Mai Fatna El Tangia, a woman who lived in a small courtyard shack and survived by begging. At the hospital, doctors determined she had slipped into a diabetic coma. Captain El Hamdi sent an officer to take her fingerprints. When the officer ran the prints through the national database, the system returned an astonishing result. The elderly beggar was actually Fatima Bent Mohammed El Arasi, born in 1930 in Korea Ba Mohammed. She had been wanted by Fez police since 1965 for the attempted murder of her husband, Abdullah Ben Idris Il Shamak Ara. 3 days later, on January 18th, Fatima regained consciousness. When brought to Captain El Hamdi's office, she readily admitted her true name without hesitation. Tears fell from her eyes as she shared the painful journey that had led her there. Born into extreme poverty, she was sent to work as a housemaid at age 10, enduring abuse from her employers and assault by their teenage sons. By age 17, she was living on the streets, eventually resorting to sex work to survive. In her 20s, she met Abdullah, a former Shushan boy who had become a local tour guide. They married and had 4 children together. However, Abdullah developed a severe drinking problem. One morning, after finding him in their home with another woman, Fatima grabbed a kitchen knife in a fit of rage and stabbed him multiple times. Believing she had killed him as neighbors gathered outside, she panicked, fled to Saleh, sold her jewelry, and spent decades working odd jobs before age and illness forced her onto the streets. Captain El Hamdi requested the original 1965 case file from Fez. The official response brought an unexpected twist. Abdullah had actually survived his injuries, and because over 30 years had passed, the statute of limitations had long expired, closing the case permanently. Furthermore, her family had been notified of her location. El Hamdi informed Fatima that she was free to go, and that the husband she thought she had killed was still alive. Overwhelmed, Fatima gathered her belongings and took a train to Fez for the first time since 1965. Meanwhile, Abdullah and their adult daughter Sanay arrived at the Saleh police station looking for her. Learning she had left, they rushed back to Fez. Upon arriving in her old neighborhood, Fatima sat near a mint vendor's stall, asking passers-by for spare change while observing the street. From the vendor, she learned her eldest daughter, Sanay, was now a nurse at the local clinic, taking care of her father and siblings, and that Abdullah had since completed the Hajjaj pilgrimage. The next morning, the mint vendor found Fatima unconscious at his stall and brought her straight to the neighborhood clinic. Sanay was on duty and examined the patient. Searching her clothes for medical history, Sanay found the hospital papers listing her name as Fatima Ilt Arisi, alongside the clearance letter from the Saleh Police Department. Realizing the elderly woman on the gurney was the mother who had vanished decades ago, Sanay broke into tears. She ran home to fetch her father and brother. Abdullah rushed to the clinic, pleading with doctors to stabilize her. Fatima was brought home, where her family gathered around her bedside. Later that evening, Fatima opened her eyes, looked at her daughter, and whispered her name. Saneh embraced her mother tightly, joined by her children and Abdallah, closing the painful chapter of a long separation. The role of a traditional wedding organizer or nagafa carries deep cultural significance in Morocco, but in early 1950s Fez, a young woman named El Daouya built a reputation catering to French Foreign Legion soldiers, earning her the nickname El Daouya El Ajan. Decades later, by the early 2000s, people called her Haja Daouya, forgetting her past. She had built a prominent wedding planning business, serving wealthy families across Fes, Meknes, and Casablanca. However, behind her lavish services, Daouya ran opportunistic scams. She frequently offered illicit fortune, telling services alongside her husband, who posed as a spiritual healer. During high-end weddings, Daouya and her assistants staged fake robberies, claiming expensive gold jewelry used to decorate the bride had gone missing. She would threaten to call the police mid-reception, pushing wealthy hosts to pay her large sums of cash to avoid a public scandal. On June 25, 2005, Daouya was hired for a lavish wedding at the Casablanca villa of prominent businessman Haj Abdulrahman El Matoui. As the reception neared its end, Daouya approached the bride's mother, claiming that a valuable gold crown worn by the bride had been stolen from the dressing room and demanding police intervention. Unmoved by the threat, Abdurrahman went upstairs to his office and called the Casablanca police chief. What Daouya did not know was that the villa was equipped with high-definition security cameras. Abdurrahman reviewed the footage with Detective Mohamed El Akari upon his arrival, clearly showing one of Daouya's assistants taking the crown and hiding it inside her bag. When Detective El Akari confronted Daouya, she suddenly tried to back down, claiming the crown was missing by mistake and wasn't genuine gold anyway. The detective walked directly to the assistant seen on camera and ordered her to produce the item. The assistant pulled the crown from her bag and confessed she was acting on Daouya's direct orders. Faced with the video evidence, Daouya admitted to running similar extortion schemes against families across multiple cities. She was arrested and held in custody facing multiple fraud charges. In October 2011, a concerned father named Abarek arrived at the Mohammedia police station with his 15-year-old son, Hassan, asking to speak with the juvenile division. Abarek explained that he had caught Hassan watching illicit video content in their living room. Hassan confessed that he and his classmates had pooled their money to purchase a burnt CD from a street vendor operating outside their high school. Hassan provided a description of the vendor, allowing Detective Mohamed Ben Sherif to identify him from police records as Nasser El Khadraoui, a repeat offender with a history of drug distribution. On October 18th, undercover officers staked out the high school and caught El Khadraoui red-handed, selling illicit discs to teenagers from his parked car. Inside the vehicle, officers recovered 15 discs containing 3 distinct adult films, alongside a portable television used to preview content. Recognizing that the videos were produced locally, police forwarded the discs to the Digital Forensics Unit in Casablanca to identify the production source. Analysis revealed the footage was recorded in 2 main settings: a deserted beach and a traditional Moroccan house. Under interrogation, El Khadraoui revealed he purchased the discs from a mobile seller operating out of a car at the Derb Galif market in Casablanca. Detective Zara Il Momin led an undercover team to the market, arresting the distributor, Sofian El Mamor. Inside Sofian's vehicle, officers seized over 1,000 copied discs. Sofian confessed that the master copies came from a smuggler in Tetuan who met him regularly in Casablanca. To locate the filming sites, regional detectives reviewed the footage. An officer from Tetuan identified the deserted shoreline as Setahat Beach along the coast near Wad Law. Lead detective Rachdi El Qadi traveled to Setahat, where a local resident recalled seeing a group of young adults and a foreign national filming on the beach during the Eid al-Adha holiday, a day when the shore was completely empty of locals. Tetuan police identified one of the actors in the footage as Fuad Il Namroud, a former local athlete. Officers arrested Il Namroud at his home, where he admitted a foreign national named Maurice Class had recruited him in Martel to organize local actors and suggest quiet filming locations like Setahat. Il Namroud guided police to the traditional house used in the videos, located in the old Medina of Tetuan. The property owner identified the tenant as Maurice Class, a Belgian national. Although Class had vacated the house, investigators set up a sting using Sofian as bait. Sofian called Class to order a large batch of discs, scheduling a meeting in Casablanca. Undercover officers trailed Class from the meeting point to a villa in the Ain Diab coastal district. On November 10th, police raided the villa, discovering a fully equipped recording studio where Class and 4 associates were dubbing the video content. Inside the property, officers seized production cameras, thousands of discs, and 3 passports bearing Class's photograph under Belgian, Israeli, and Egyptian identities. Class was placed in isolated custody, facing production and distribution charges, bringing an end to the illicit network operating across the region. In August 2010, Captain Raja Serhal was serving as acting head of a homicide division in Rabat. Early on the morning of August 18th, she received an urgent call directing her to a villa on An Narjis Street in the Hay Riyadh district. Upon arrival at Villa 529, forensic teams had already secured the area. Inside a maid's room, police found the homeowner, Il Mokhtar Ben Abu, standing near the body of his 22-year-old domestic worker, Zahra Bofanim. Zahra had suffered a single fatal stab wound to the chest. Her clothing was torn, suggesting a struggle. El Mokhtar claimed he had gone to wake Zahra at 5 o'clock in the morning before leaving to join his wife, Zohar, and son at a resort in Arica. Finding her body in a pool of blood, he immediately called his wife, who instructed him to contact the police. Initial suspicion fell on El Mokhtar and nearby construction workers, but questioning yielded no physical evidence connecting them to the crime. When Zohar returned from Arica, she defended her husband fiercely, even offering to take the blame herself to protect him. However, Captain Serhal pressed Zohar for more details about previous household help. Zohar revealed that 2 months earlier, she had dismissed a former maid named Acha Eld Amadi after catching her stealing. A background check on Acha revealed a prior criminal record for theft and assault. Captain Serhal instructed Zohar to call Acha, pretending she wanted to rehire her. Acha agreed to meet at the villa the following evening, where waiting officers took her into custody for questioning. While interrogating Acha, Captain Serhal ordered forensic analysis on biological material recovered from underneath the victim's fingernails. Lacking immediate lab results, police temporarily released Acha under surveillance. undercover officers tracked her to an address in the old Medina, where she met a man named Abdesamad Nourani. The pair hurried to a bus station, attempting to board a coach to Beni Mellal. Officers intercepted the pair on the bus. Abdesamad drew a knife and threatened the officers, but backup units quickly disarmed and arrested him. Inside their luggage, police found stolen high-end traditional garments, which Zohar later identified as belonging to her. The following morning, forensic lab results confirmed a definitive match. The DNA recovered from under Zohra's fingernails matched H.A.L. Ahmadi, and blood traces on Abdesamad's knife matched the victim. Faced with the forensic proof, Aisha confessed. She explained that she believed the villa would be empty while the owners were in Arica. Her partner, Abdesamad, climbed the perimeter wall and unlatched the gate. Once inside, they encountered Zohra in the hallway. When Zohra screamed, Abdesamad panicked, drew his knife, and stabbed her in the chest, tearing her clothes afterward to mislead investigators. Captain Searle documented the full confessions, closing the homicide investigation and bringing both perpetrators to justice.